I'm Tom Laporte. One of the concepts I really enjoy teaching is the socialization of information that comes via the collective consciousness. Of course, this really becomes tricky between generations. For example, phrases like remember the Alamo or Dr. Livingstone, I presume, have been lost to the millennium generation. This leaves me to wonder about the criteria by which events and people are remembered across time. The USS Jeannette was a ship that was engaged in exploration toward the Arctic Circle. In the end, the goal was not achieved and lots of lives were lost. Many people do not know the names of the captain or the crew. We don't see images of the boat and widespread art, and we don't really hear this story in other theatrical accounts. However, we do know the names of King Leonidas and General Custer, both of which who were engaged in monumental wars in which they lost, and nearly every single one of their men died, and in each case the leader, Leonidas and Custer, died. I wonder, how is it that they grabbed that moment and carried it forward, even though it was wrapped around a loss? History clearly remembers that King Leonidas led 300 plus or minus men into the Battle of Thermopylae. They held their ground for a while. Strategically, it was important for the long-range war. However, at the end of the day, the human losses were overwhelming. Almost to a man, everyone died. Many people contend Leonidas was aware of the possible outcome. In fact, he probably well knew that all the lives would be lost in that battle, and they hold him accountable for that. But overwhelmingly, the world counts him as a great hero. His image is replicated in art across the mediums, from paintings, drawings, etching, sculptures. He's recognized in works of literature, in works of poetry, and then many, many movies. Of course, recently the famous 300 series. Custer marched into the Battle of Little Bighorn in the full light of the printing press. This left historians with a terrific amount of details about the war. Again, like Leonidas, the U.S. cavalry were overwhelmed by the odds of the Indian nation, and the outcome was the same. Almost a massacre of all the men, including the death of their general. The Battle of Little Bighorn was not Custer's last stand. He continues to loom large in American history. There are some who criticize the general and his warfare methods, but overall he is recognized as an American hero in mixed media, like works of art, sculptures, paintings, drawings, and numerous books. There have been plays and movies, beginning from Buffalo Bill's Wild West show that played in the United States and in Europe. One of the most interesting pieces are at the left-hand corner. You can see Custer's Last Stand. It's a poster that was established by the Anheuser-Busch Company. They made a number of them. Even though it's filled with some historical inaccuracies, it at some point was possibly the most viewed work of art in the United States. My students and others often speculate on how the world would be different if Adolf Hitler had been accepted to art school. One might also ponder, would we know the names King Leonidas and General Custer had those gentlemen been successful in their campaigns? Something interesting to think about is the Persians, modern-day Iranians, do not celebrate or remember the Battle of Thermopylae. However, a number of Native Americans gather in Montana, in an area owned by the Crow Nation, to reenact the Battle of Little Bighorn every year. For them, that moment marks defending native soil, their homeland. I don't know why it is that some things are remembered and some things are not. It is clear that in both cases, at Thermopylae and at the Battle of Little Bighorn, even though there were severe losses on those days and those historical events, ultimately the wars they were waging were won. So perhaps the victors did write history here. Perhaps the sacrifice was so great that that's why we remember Leonidas and Custer. It sort of reminds me of a silly movie called The Replacements from 2000, and it's about the National Football League, where the professional players had gone on strike. so they brought in replacement players. And after a period of time, the professionals agreed with the unions to come back. And so the replacement players were in a game, and they knew it would be their last game and possibly their last play. And Keanu Reeves was playing the quarterback, and he called the team into a huddle. And here I'm paraphrasing. He says, "It's been an honor sharing the field of battle with you. Pain heals, chicks dig scars, and glory lasts forever."